admin team answers resident inquiries up at the front desk. They process passports, pet licenses, take payments, manage the department's contracts and financial guarantees, and so many other things. Our Planning and Permit Center team focuses their time on managing permits and development review and assisting residents in obtaining information about project feasibility and the overall permitting process. The building team includes our inspectors, who spend most of their time in the field, and our plan reviewers, who assist applicants in ensuring compliance with the building codes. Our code compliance team investigates complaints and enforces city codes where necessary. And finally, the long-range planning team focuses on policy, regulations, special projects, and juggling multiple projects each year, keeping them on time and within budget. We also wanted to highlight the two staff roles that the Planning Commission works most closely with. Lena, up there, is one of our front desk office assistants and serves as the Planning Commission coordinator. And Matt, DCD's deputy director, has recently taken over from Evan as the Planning Commission liaison. And you can see a little bit more about their roles here on screen, and you'll continue to work with them closely throughout the upcoming year. And of course, you'll also be hearing plenty from David, DCD's director, myself, Jackie, our management analyst, and Evan, our senior management analyst. We thought it would also be kind of fun to highlight the work that our teams have been doing throughout the year so that you have a better sense of what we're all working on and all the work that's been accomplished to support the community. So with so many major updates and projects underway this year, the Planning Commission has had a very busy and very productive year. This year was by far the most intensive year that we've had, as we wrapped up some projects that have been several years in the making, and the Planning Commission played a really essential role in helping us do all of this work. Together with staff, community members, consultants, and stakeholders, the Planning Commission helped us update the city's critical area ordinance, the comprehensive plan, create the city's first transportation master plan, refine our permit review process, and update our development regulations to implement the comprehensive plan and the state's middle housing requirements. We also started the foundational work to update the city's only sub-area plan, the Town Center Plan, along with its development regulations, which will continue through part of 2025. So the City Council will be helping to solidify our 2025 work plan at their February retreat, but we wanted to provide a high-level overview of the items that we've included in DCD's proposed 2025 work plan, which the Planning Commission will be involved with. In 2025, we'll continue working with Framework to complete the Town Center Plan and code amendments. We'll also be amending SMC Title 25, which relates to the Shoreline Master Program, to incorporate the recent updates to the critical areas regulations. And towards the year's second half, we anticipate starting several projects that will carry through into 2026. These will include foundational steps in developing sub-area plans for the neighborhood centers, which we included in our comp plan. We'll also start working on updates to Title 24A, our code that updates the comprehensive plan and development regulations based on the lessons learned after 5 years of implementation. That was actually one of my first projects when I came to work here. Finally, we'll be working on several miscellaneous code updates related to a variety of topics. This will probably include things like electrical vehicle charging, animals, lighting, homeless encampments, on-site sanitary, sewer, also known as septic, as well as the docket item that was just approved to integrate updates to the TMP and other necessary changes to the comp plan and development regulations. So in 2025, we'll start the work on the miscellaneous code updates, working with the Planning Commission and City Council to briefly discuss the topics and then identify the problem statement to be addressed by the code updates. And if there's capacity on the work plan, we'll start drafting code amendments related to electrical vehicle charging, the updates related to the TMP, and then any necessary updates to the comp plan or development regulations. The other topics will be drafted in 2026. Reflection is a really integral part of our work here in DCD. It helps us continually learn and grow and improve our approach. So we wanted to provide an opportunity tonight for the Planning Commission to share feedback and ideas. We're going to start with reflection about 2024, and then we have a few additional questions for you on the following slide to help us prepare for 25. As we mentioned, a lot of work was completed in 24, so we're very curious to hear what you're most proud of and what the lessons learned from your perspective are. So I'm going to pause here and hand things over to Chair Bachman.
You're all jumping at the bit to go first. You think about it ahead of time? Thank you. Did you think about it ahead of time and have some reflection type comments? Syed's got his microphone turned on.
Well, I was thinking about first making it easy and talk about the arrangement. That was a big plus, and I think that this works better in a way that we talk to each other, we're so close to each other, and functionally this works better. This has nothing to do with the comp plan, it has nothing to do with the arrangement, and I think that works very well. So that's one issue. The other thing is that I think that as you heard from Mary, one of the things that we should be really working on with assistance from the staff is to respond to the inquiries and the questions and all the things coming from the public and somehow address it rather than hear it. And that's the last time that we hear it from the. Now I understand that there is some form of policy that we have right now that some of these questions are posed and answers provided and posted on the website. But I don't know if that's the only way, that's the best way to address those concerns that I'm hearing from a number of people that they think that they kind of feel that, well, we come to the council and we may, or the planning commission, and we discuss or bring some issue and nobody really getting back to us, either including it or they have some argument against it and so forth. That's another issue that I think I would like to bring up. But overall, I'm really proud of the accomplishment that this group, as well as the City Council, with the help of the staff, that we did in the last 12 months, particularly as far as the comp plan. Comp plan was a major accomplishment.
Thanks. Ajay?
Yeah, I want to echo Commissioner Syed Safavian's credit to the team. We could not have gotten the comp plan done without the team's diligent work at that. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. As far as the other things, obviously the comp plan felt like a big thing. I thought the cake had a wording written on that to say congrats on the comp plan or something like that. But that was the big highlight that was there. One thing that I learned from this one, and I was talking with Mary before the meeting started, was that we at the Planning Commission have a pretty long horizon. We look at the 20-year plan, we look at everything. I think our participation in going and talking in city council meetings will probably help them translate that into shorter actions that can be taken up. So that's back on me. So the resolution for the new year will be that I should attend more city council meetings and be part of that. And hopefully that's not getting recorded because then I'll be called out. The other thing that I saw was that I was walking by Lake Sammamish and I saw a number of kokanee salmon in the runoff to the lake. And that's when I thought that we don't talk enough about the natural salmon that is part of this, the lake that is part of the city. So we should work more and have a specific action. So I'll go back, I'll work on climate action to figure out if there's something that we need to do more for this thing and then come back with plans for that. Obviously the EV and other things are a great way to work that in, but that'll be something to look at. And that was it. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thanks for all the work.
John, how about you?
I thought you'd do Mike first, but put me on the spot.
I thought I'd, give him a little more time to think about it.
So first of all, totally off topic, is big thanks to the city and all of our neighbors for the resilience in storm response. Still waiting to see if the city is going to provide us with storm debris dump somewhere, which would be nice. Okay, so enough of my editorials. Again, echo chamber here for what's been said. I like the new arrangement. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of long meetings, but I didn't feel like there was any time wasted. And just trying to get us through the comp plan in terms of the planning document I don't think we were looking as much at what the implications, well, yeah. As Jay said, we're thinking very long-term, kind of big picture rather than putting a building here or there. And so it's always, I think, a bit of a struggle for all of us because it's easier to live in the here and now, but when you're planning out 20 years, and I've been here for 30, so that means 50 years. Yeah, so what's it going to look like? And that's kind of what we're talking about with the comp plan is how is this going to guide us forward? So huge, huge effort. And appreciate, particularly at the last meeting, the conversation about giving the city some flexibility on making adjustments going forward because we do the best we can, but life's life, things change. So having some flexibility to come back and reopen certain issues, I think, is really critical, particularly given the city's economic forecasts, housing issues, just everything. So again, thank you to everyone. And even our tech staff who keeps us mics working. I think that's all I've got for this question.
Okay, Suda? Everybody seems to think
I
that.
know. I was like, I would be the last one. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? I know that was the biggest complaint for 2024. Like, we can't hear Suda. I would like to say comp plan was the thing, but it's not closest to me. But transportation master plan was my best one. I loved it. That was the reason why I got on the planning commission. So I'm happy to see that's happening. And the middle housing was very close to me. And I learned a lot, and I'm so glad to be part of that. And I appreciate Mary and Paul a lot too, because the input that you guys bring in is valuable. During this storm season, I saw like, wow, we are lacking an emergency management plan per se, like as the city. You know, should we be working on it for next year? So that would be my suggestion for next year. But other than that, you guys all do a great job. So thank you. Yeah, that's it. Oh, I have more. Just kidding.
Hung Yang, anything you want to add?
Well, I can throw
Times you were here anyway.
I can throw my 2 cents into the echo chamber, I guess. Well, you know, I think for me, I just again want to thank everyone for welcoming me onto this group and helping me to kind of know this group and the work that it does. I think one thing I find really special about this environment in particular is just your guys' ability to really think deeply about issues, respectfully disagree, and work together to make what's best for our city. And like as an 18-year-old, this gives me so much hope about what I can do, what the future will look like in the city, in our country, you know, in our state. And that just makes me very happy. And yeah, I take the things I learned here and I bring them back to the youth board. And on the youth board, I think people generally, like the other kids, they all reflect this kind of thing. It's like we now know just how complicated it is, how difficult it is to make our city run and to make our city run in the best way it can. And, you know, we love the work that you guys do, and we really value all the time that the Planning Commission puts into its efforts.
Great. Mike,
So you don't want to go now?
if you want me to.
No. Well, in terms of biggest successes, getting all of that work done. And that's kudos to the entire staff, to all those long hour, 3-4 hour meetings that we had. It was a lot of work. So very proud of that. And then within all of that body of work, I actually felt proudest about middle housing. And the reason for that was it took a pretty deep dive into the rules, regulations, and comparing what other cities are doing and the trade-offs. It was at a level of depth that was kind of more challenging, and it was nice to get past that. So that's the successes piece. In In terms of some lessons learned, I think there are a couple of times when we modified the agenda to allow for public comments earlier, which was, I think, helpful to make sure we gave preference to the residents that wanted to make public comment. And, other things in terms of what was helpful and so forth. You have what could be done better, but there's also a few things that worked well. Really appreciate the time and effort that staff devoted to answering questions, sometimes at length, sometimes at very long length. But that was super helpful because that education is so important to be able to make, wise recommendations. And that the staff really encouraging us to ask questions between the meetings and being very open. And we probably didn't take advantage of that as much as we should have. But, it's good to know that the doors are open or the phones are live and so forth. The packets are really well put together, and I really appreciated being able to see marked up versions and final versions. It was easy to read through that. And it was great. I forget what that software was that we used to put, yes. It was nice to be able to put a lot of detailed comments in that. Way better than trying to do that in meetings. It would be nice if some of the presentation material could be presented ahead of time. And I know that's challenging because you're all working up to the last minute, but it just helps us prepare a little bit more. And it would be nice to see ahead of meetings maybe some relevant benchmarks or reference material, things that we can use to educate ourselves rather than just asking David Pyle for a 10-minute explanation about something during the meetings. But overall, when friends of mine are asking about the Planning Commission or complaining about the city or whatever, it's really nice to be able to say there's a lot of people doing their absolute best, very much concerned about making the city as good as possible. And so that's very much appreciated. So, thank you. Tough act to follow, Mark. And I'm talking about all of them. So.
I have low expectations for myself, so don't worry about that. And by the way, I think David loves those expositions that we make him do, so I wouldn't worry about that. In terms of positive things, you guys covered quite a bit of it. For me, of course, I'll say two things. One, anytime development regulations come up, I like development regulations because I feel like it's something that we do that then you, not right away, but eventually see things change in the community. And so that was one of the things I was most interested in when I started on the Planning Commission and still am. A couple of more sort of general comments. So I've been on the Planning Commission 7 years, and consistently kind of echoing what you said, Mike, it's been good people and great staff to work with, friendly people. And it really is valuable to me to have some insight into, it's a little bit of a grandiose statement, but into how democracy works, right? Because really what's going on in our community is based on what we're doing. And so that's a fun part to me, is to see us take actions and people that don't agree and people that do agree, and see how the staff and the consultants work and have, tried to navigate us through all this stuff. It's incredibly rewarding and interesting to see it from the inside point of view. So I really have appreciated that. It's always fun, and I'm hoping the next year will be a little bit fun too. I hope that, I always try to run these meetings in a way that has a little levity to it, because some of this stuff can get a little hard to slog through. So I will, if I'm still sitting in this chair, I'll continue to try to do it that way. But it's been an interesting year with a lot of stuff. In the 7 years I've done it, we've never had this much heavy material. We've sometimes had lots of topics, and sometimes those topics could be smaller. And so you kind of have to be agile to jump from one to the other. This year was very much, the topics were all interrelated to each other. And that was kind of an interesting thing. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in 2024. And I guess your next question is, what were the biggest challenges? Some of you talked about that a little bit already. Can I just start us off on that, or do you have anything you want to?
Do you want to segue into 25, which I think will be our big challenge?
Go ahead.
Okay. Here we go. This is more, it says preparations, but it's really kind of joint problem solving. So as we have said many times, 24 was a really heavy lift for both staff and the Planning Commission, and we're looking forward to a little more breathing room in 25, but we also have some decent challenges that we need to consider. One of which is my staff team, which is very small. We'll have 2 people out on parental leave for part of the year, which leaves really just yours truly. And we also only have professional services budget for the town center plan and code amendment work to finish that out, which means we're doing everything in-house, and we have no budget for staff overtime. We also know that you all have very busy lives personally and professionally, so we want to make sure that we're respecting everyone's time. And on the flip side of that, we know it's really important to make sure that you guys are engaged and that you have the time and the information to dig in and really feel comfortable with the information we're presenting and have your questions answered. So what I'm hoping we can do this evening is have a conversation about some different tools and ideas, and we've put a list up there just from what we came up with in talking about how we can be a little bit more efficient with our meeting time and also support you guys in review ahead of the meetings, to try to shorten the meeting time itself and try to keep it as much as possible to around 2 hours, which will help us significantly. So with that, open to all suggestions and ideas, and I will hand things back to Chair Bachman.
Yeah, I would echo that. I'm in my office every morning by 7 and there till 6 most days, and so when our meetings go past 8:30, my production level is dropping rapidly, and I'm not really even sometimes paying attention because it just wears me down. So I think that, combined with just respect for people's time, we need to really think carefully about how to try to take steps that could, in theory, keep our meetings to the 2 hours. Doesn't mean that that's absolutely have to stop at 8:30 and it's going to be a failure for at 8:31. No, but there are probably some things we could try proactively, and you guys might have some good ideas about that. But I do think we need to make sure in 25 we do a little bit better with that. So I echo Miriam, ideas about that or comments about that, and or any other challenges you see for 25 and the Planning Commission. Go ahead.
Actually, I hope we're not so efficient that we lose the opportunity to hear your dad jokes.
I have many of them. All you have to do is give me the sign.
But we want to continue to be efficient too. Actually, and this is done in I think probably most of the agendas. There's the key questions. But the more we can help you, that helps us. And so it's like, these are the real topics, or the parts of the bigger topic that, the planning department really wants the commission's and public's input on. And just be really crystal clear about that. And that would help focus us a bit so we don't wander off on a sort of a tangential topic. So that's super helpful. And I was thinking a little bit about efficiency of meetings and some of the comments I made. So I know I have a little bit more time than somebody who's working from 7 to 6 every day. And having some reference material, things that can help us be a little bit more knowledgeable when we get into topics. Something like middle housing, which there's a lot of complexity, and we're asking about the benchmarks, where else has this been done? Some pre-reading can be helpful for that. That's not necessarily part of the formal agenda packet, but sort of supplemental material that doesn't necessarily have the same kind of formality. Might help out a little bit. I may have a couple of other things to add a little bit later, but those are the things that kind of popped into mind in terms of helping to keep us focused and use the meeting time efficiently.
Anybody else, Suda?
I agree with you, Chair Bachman, because I go to work and come back, and I'm like, after 8:30, I'm like, I can't function anymore, but I try to. The agenda time reminders sometimes will be very helpful, and then pre-meeting preparations, when you send it all, and I see Syed like talk to them beforehand. I think that was very helpful, right, with your questions. That, we should do that. And also, I was thinking like, we have to stay on the topic. Sometimes we do digress to different topics or different research kind of stuff. If the staff can tell us like, hey, we'll get back to you on that later. Instead of going into the spiel of explaining, yes, that would be helpful. And I would agree with 2.5 hours, maybe, for half hour for your dad jokes and 2 hours for the meeting. So, thank you.
Again, I can do that. How about you, John?
So this past year, I think, was unusual in terms of our workload. And I know this is kind of a high wire balancing act for staff in terms of providing us with enough high-level information to give us an overview of the topic. But we also got a huge amount of detail. And I have to call out Mike as our chief proofreader. I think he got more grammatical errors than anyone else. But sometimes I felt like that's what I was doing. I was proofreading. When you get into the appendices and the transportation appendice, whoa. So thinking about where we can add value from a policy perspective as opposed to fixing words. And I don't want to be too negative about the detail, because there were times, and I remember one comment I made was, well, we shouldn't be preserving view corridors, and David perked up right away, and yeah, that comes out. So that's just a balancing act. And I don't think we'll have as much of that going forward because we won't be doing the comp plan stuff. And I'll just note that in some cities, the Planning Commission never sees the detail. You just get the policy stuff. So kudos on that side. And then to echo Mike's comment, the packets are much improved. And having the ability to look at some stuff, make red lines online, really, really helpful. So I think that's all I've got. Again, for me, meeting times, I'm a night person and retired, so sorry, Mark. Meeting time is not quite as disastrous for me, but yeah, I think we need to be sensitive to that.
So, I'm going to be driving to work in the morning thinking, oh, John's still asleep.
Feel jealous?
Exactly. Syed, how about you?
Okay, I'm going to start with a couple of things. It would be really nice if for any topic that you bring it to us, give us an overview, summary, issues, challenges, highlights, and things like that. So, and as John mentioned, yes, it would be really useful to look at the details. That if you give us an overview of the issues and the things that when we look at the detail, we have those in mind, it would really help us. The other one is that, I hope I'm the only one, that graphics can go a long way. Pie charts, matrices, things like that. Graphics can go a long way to really give us a more overview of what the issues are, and I think that should be really looked at it. One of the problem and the challenge that I've had for on a number of issues, that we get a lot of reports from consultants, and I brought it a number of times, is the font size. I'm looking at on my God, sometimes I wanted to print it out. No matter what I do, I can't get it over. It would really help us, because I'm the kind of guy that I look into the detail. But I'm frustrated, and I go with the magnifier, look at it, try to understand. It takes too much time if we can solve that problem. Let's see. I believe Mike and John mentioned it, references material. That would kind of go a long way. So when we bring in an issue, give us an example. Hey, middle housing in city of X did it, and this is an example that they follow the guidelines, and that's how it looks like. Give us a graphic material to look at and a kind of reference to when we're talking about the discussion. In the case of the transportation master plan, I complimented Audrey at the city council meeting a couple of days ago. I'm glad that really they got into so much of detail that day and night comparing to the previous one as far as the amount of work and could do to their group. So I have a couple of questions. Question number one, in your presentation, you listed the things that you want to be doing, starting with the town center. But towards the end, you said if time permits, you're going to look at updating the comp plan and the transportation, some of the issues that Audrey brought it up at the council meeting, that my understanding from hearing her presentation at council, these are going to be the priority. But what you're saying that if the time permits, we're getting into that. Can you clarify that discrepancy?
Yes, sorry about that. I was really referring more to electric vehicle charging. So we have the docket item. Assuming the TMP stays on schedule, we will absolutely be handling that at the end of 25. I think it's just a question of our staffing capacity to know if we would like to start EV charging and looking at the draft code for that at the end of 25. But depending on how everything shakes out with our staffing and when they return, it might get pushed to 26.
The other question in your presentation tonight again, my understanding is that the term that I'm used to for the last 10, 15 years, we call it sub-area plan, but you don't call it sub-area, you call it neighborhood plan. Is that the definition the same, or you're looking at a little maybe geographically bigger, smaller, and what are we talking about?
So if you remember in the comp plan, we have our sub-areas, which we designated as the mixed-use shopping centers, so Pine Lake, Klahani, Inglewood. But then we also designated a few areas more within residential neighborhoods, including the East Lake property that Mr. Eastman submitted a docket request for. Those are going to be neighborhood centers, so they're going to be different, but they'll still require a plan. So we're going to be starting with kind of the pre-planning work to set us up to create what we're calling sub-area plans for the neighborhood centers. In 26, toward the end of 26, we're going to start trying to put together some foundational work to get a budget scope for 2027 to work on some of the sub-area plans, the bigger shopping centers.
I'm more confused now.
I'm sorry.
So next year we're going to look at the neighborhood plan, and in 2027 we look at the sub-area plan?
Correct.
So that tells me that we're talking about two geographic areas.
Multiple. So I'd say the neighborhood centers for 26, we're looking at the foundational elements. So when we're starting to look at these individual neighborhood centers, what do we consistently across them want to do? What's our approach going to be? What are we going to do for outreach? What are we going to do to look at the geographic area and study that? What are other cities doing in terms of neighborhood centers? What can we learn from them? And then once we have a clear plan, which we'll be taking to you and to City Council to give us feedback on and buy off on, then we'll start looking at the individual neighborhood centers and saying, okay, East Lake Sammamish Parkway Neighborhood Center, doing outreach for that, actually doing all of the work that we said we were going to do for the foundational plan and building individual neighborhood center plans that really fit the needs of that area and that community.
So again, back to the geographic boundary of the neighborhood center versus sub-area. Are they exactly the geographic, the boundary, is that the same or different?
Different.
Size?
Different. So if you look on the future land use map that was approved in the comprehensive plan, you'll see kind of a little, I think, star for the neighborhood centers. So those exact boundaries for the neighborhood centers still have to be defined, whereas for the sub-areas, you'll see it clearly defined on the maps.
And one more thing that is not that much to do directly with the planning, but somehow it's going to affect the planning issues, zoning. I haven't heard that much discussion about the zoning. Is that something that is coming up to the Planning Commission for discussion?
With our comp plan update, we did not choose to change any of the zoning, so we did the overlays for middle housing instead. So the zoning will stay the same as it currently is, but there'll be more options within that zoning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be one different voice in this whole thing. I think this year was a different year. I hadn't seen a 4-hour meeting until this year. right? Usually when I request for extra time, it'll be 15 minutes, and this time it was like, let's do 60 minutes extensions at a time, right? So I think it's because of the work that we had and the load that we had, which did this thing. I have another feeling that the long meetings that we have at the Planning Commission makes the meetings at City Council and the other commissions much more manageable. And so we're probably taking the brunt of that because they're taking information from what we are doing. And if we don't do that, it's going to spill into their meeting. So somewhere the physics adds up or the numbers add up, and it's just laws of physics that fit into the place. So, and it's a labor of love. I mean, we signed up to be in this commission because it's a labor of love. So it works out that way. The only difference I'd like to say is that I was looking at this thing, the numbered presentation slides, I don't know if that's going to make a difference. If it's slide 2 or slide 15, it doesn't change anything. So I'm good with that. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to clarify, because I had the same reaction when one of my staff said this. It's showing on the bottom of the slide, like slide 2 of 10. So that way, as we're going through the presentation, if we're pausing, you guys can keep in the back of your mind, okay, we're only like a quarter of the way through. There's a lot more to go, or we're getting toward the end. It's okay to take a little more time.
Okay. That could help, because then we would ask lesser questions as we're getting there. That's good. The ahead of the time topics, that definitely helps, because it helps prepare and come for these things. One thought I had was that I thought sometime when I was asking questions, somebody's going to put up the clock over there and say, you only 2 minutes to ask questions. Okay, so I don't know if that's a valid point to do that and keep that up. No, Matt, that's not an idea to note down.
Exactly. Just give me the power and I'll do it in a heartbeat.
But that's about it. I don't have I think that this is good that we have these discussions. That's what we're here for. That's what the city plans for. And I think if we don't do this, it's going to spill into other meetings. And so this is better that we do it at the Planning Commission as it stands. So that's my.
So a couple comments on this. First, I would say that, so there are things I think that all of us as commissioners are obligated as a commissioner to do. And even I will absolutely admit that sometimes I struggle, but be prepared ahead of time. So don't, show up to the meeting with a list of 80 questions that you should have sent by an email ahead of time. That's not the way to do it. That's not appropriate. Prepare ahead of time, understand what the topic is, and focus your commentary and questions on the topic, not off on some tangent, not off, And David has said before, it's absolutely critical as a commission that we hash things out in public. That's important. That's the way the process works. But a lot of times we can get simple questions answered ahead of time. And that's actually one of my suggestions is maybe we need to have a more formalized tool of some kind that there's a cadence that goes with it each meeting, that questions received, 24 hours in advance or something can receive a written response. And the other thing I'd say is when you list the questions out, which is for me, that helps a lot when I do that a couple days ahead of time, it helps me to then organize my thoughts better and say, okay, now I don't understand. This clearly I think I have a better handle on, and this is what's valuable in this conversation. So all of this is me encouraging you to be better about preparing ahead of time. And ahead of time is not an hour before the meeting, which is what I sometimes do. No, I'm not that bad, but sometimes, right? Ahead of time is a couple days or even 3 or 4 days ahead of time so that you can organize your thoughts and come with a list of questions that are narrowed to the topic at hand or are submitted in writing with enough time for staff to respond or whatever. That kind of stuff can really help us. And if we could formalize some kind of tool and cadence, I think that would help. A couple things about process in the meetings. One is I think that sometimes we do a really good job of introducing a topic and saying, here's what we talked about before, here's what we're talking about now, here's what we're asking for from the commission. Sometimes consultants, especially, who work on this stuff all day long for a week at a time, they come in here and they're hot and ready to dive right in. And I'm sometimes sitting here thinking, wait a minute, what? This has been 2 months since we talked about this, and I'm trying to remember, where did we leave off last time? A little bit more discipline, especially with consultants. You can tell Jeff I said that. But a little bit more discipline about the 2-minute introduction from the standpoint of somebody who hasn't looked at it for 2 months, because that sometimes is a challenge and creates a bunch of, now I'm trying to remember this, now I'm not paying attention, wait a minute, what was the, yeah, I think that would be one thing to be a little bit more disciplined about. I also think another suggestion I thought of is, and we used to do this a little bit in the past, we would have like one training session for commissioners. Sometimes it was just new commissioners, but I think we should maybe consider doing it for everyone in the 1st of February or something, where we sit down and the only thing we're doing is going through, okay, reminder, this is what the purpose of the commission is. This is how the commission works. Here's the rules we have in case you've never seen them. Here's what our objective is. We do it this way. We do this way. Those things could change, but here's how they would have to change, right? Just to kind of remind everybody about the who, what, why, and where of the Planning Commission. Because I think, especially I take a lot of that for granted, having been involved for a while, but sometimes we drift away from remembering, for example, we should bring up these topics. Yeah, those are great. And the way to get those topics on the agenda is to go to the city council and say, the city needs to consider these, like emergency response plan, which Hisham texted me right away during the storm and said, we need to revisit the emergency response plan. Yeah, that's a good topic. But we work for the city council. So our authority to initiate topics is pretty limited. It's mostly driven by what the council asks us to do. So just some of that kind of stuff. I think it'd be good to maybe do a refresher once a year, which is maybe a separate discussion, have some cake, and just revisit kind of the outline of what it is that the Planning Commission does and why, and what the rules of engagement are, and that sort of thing.
I think that's a great idea, Chair, and I'm looking forward to that because I think that'll keep us aligned for 1 year, and then next year comes and we can refresh it, just so we're not going off the guardrails. So thank you. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as challenges, I think that kind of fits in a challenge because there's always a desire to add more topics to our list of things to do. But if we don't have staff budget and the council hasn't put it on the list and on and on and on, the limits of our authority are pretty constrained. Anything else about challenges or suggestions on how to overcome them?
So I really like the idea of the training, educational session. Thinking a little more broadly, we've got, 6 or 7 commissions, all need kind of the same sort of refresher. And I'd particularly invite the youth to sit in on something like that, because as you said, Mark, earlier, this is democracy. All politics are local kind of thing. And this is how it works. So the more people we can expose to that, even beyond our little group, I think would be valuable.
Syed?
One idea, in the past, anytime that I had a question or wanted to send in an email to the staff, I CC the commission members. But I don't see that if, Mark, if you send something, I don't get a copy of it. Would it be a good idea to share that information?
So my response would be that I've always been told through the years that we need to be cautious about email communications amongst the commission as a group because of the open public meetings rules. As soon as we start having a conversation in email with more than 3 commissioners, a quorum, right? So more than 3, then that becomes an issue for complying with the OPMA. So it's probably, we just have to be super cautious about relying too much on email for a lot of communication amongst the commission. I mean, simple things, my opinion is, I'm sure the city attorney would slap me, but my opinion is that for a simple thing, it's really never going to become an issue. It's probably fine. But boy, the minute there starts to be reply all back and forth, now all of a sudden we are discussing city business in a forum that's not available to the public unless we somehow make it available to the public. And that's a big no-no. So I would only just caution that we got to think about that and be careful about how we have discussions through email, because that
No,
can
it's
be.
not a matter of discussion. Am I violating any rules that I'm not supposed to CC commissioners on an issue, an email that I'm sending to David? Is that what I'm hearing?
Again, what I've been told is, as long as it doesn't initiate a conversation where somebody replies to everybody, it's fine, right? It's just broadcast. And as long as it's one-way broadcast, that's fine. But the problem with that is that then all of us have to be disciplined not to reply and start a whole conversation in a forum that's not appropriate. So that's why it's just good to be, it's okay, right? Copy the commission if you want to. I think that that's fine. But then the rest of us have to be disciplined about not replying all.
Or maybe CC'd instead of copy it, CC'd, so they know.
Yeah.
So you know that I asked this question and this is Dave's response. And I don't recall that when Dave responded to that, does he CC you guys? I don't know, I don't remember that. But that is something that, I don't know, I'm not clear
Yeah.
that.
One thing we could think about is if you guys do want to create kind of a formalized structure for submitting questions ahead of the meeting and us answering, one thing we could do is maybe consolidate them in one place and send them out to everybody. And you would just have to know not to reply all to any email, but you'll at least have a record of what questions were asked and
That
what
would
our
be a
answers
great
are.
idea. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be a great idea.
What else for challenges or suggestions? Yang, anything?
Nothing too much from me. I think one thing I always appreciated in the agendas is, again, like I think someone said before, listing out the main questions at the very start before like 60 pages of material come up.
I really like the what's needed from the commission section, because it says if it's informational action or something like that, it sets up what we have to come and plan and talk about when we come to the meeting. So I would say let's use that a lot more. And now that we've started using the tool Conveyor, I can never get the name of it right.
We either need to find a new name for
need to
it
find a new
or
name.
something.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Convio is actually owned by Framework and we're borrowing it for our projects. So maybe one thing that I can do is do a little research on what it would take for us to get it so that we could use that as an ongoing tool for you guys.
Because I'll give you an example of how that worked out really well. When you look in the comp plan and I look at Mike's questions, for example, and I'd say that, okay, this is what he's asking, and then I'll be able to think towards that and work towards that. It was a lot more refreshing and a lot more informational for me than it would normally be. So that could, if we had not done that, our meetings would not be 4 hours long, it'll be like 6 hours long, right? So the fact that we did that made it a lot better in that case. So more of those tools would be fantastic.
Actually, I'll just add, so a lot of good ideas, and they would improve things. Knowing staffing, I think you'll have to balance, if any of these things take like very much more staff time and keeps you from sort of your appointed rounds, we'll suffer through it. So there's a little bit of, I think John used the kind of tightrope balancing act thing. So, do use judgment and we'll be able to work through it. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate how grateful we are and how much we really do appreciate all of your insight and all the time that you guys take to review and share your feedback with us and all the good conversations, and that we are here. Please don't take this conversation as us not wanting to be open and communicate with you all. We are definitely here and available to assist with any questions or information, and we'll review this as a team and decide what the best approach is and bring that back.
I do want to make sure, and give anybody the kind of the last chance to talk about anything in 2025. I think that was kind of on the list of what we're looking forward to in 2025, and just see if anybody has any comments about that. Most people wove that into their comments already, but one, last chance just to make sure.
Sayed asked a lot of nice, great questions. So, do you plan to have at least small, I wouldn't call it study group, but a small group where we come in and we do some of the prep so that we can keep the meeting times shorter? Is that part of the plan to do that kind of thing? Because that can bring it down to 2 hours. We'll do a lot more groundwork.
I think it's definitely something we're open to. We could maybe talk about having like a ongoing time before the meeting, a day or two before, where we can make that available.
So my question goes back to more of the technical stuff, sort of related to what's going on with planning in general. So I know that we'll be doing some work on the transportation master plan this coming year. And I can't remember if Audrey told us if transportation would be revisiting the neighborhood plan. And the reason I bring that up is, we work through part of the TMP as part of the comp plan. And it really focused on moving traffic through the city. But I think a lot of our residents are really they'll be more interested in what's going on in my neighborhood. What can I do to help cut down on speeding or cut through traffic, or, there's a gazillion different issues. So I was just curious if that was going to land on our plate this year or maybe next, or, 25 or 26.
Sure, that's a great question. I have to follow up with Public Works to find out, but it's something that we need to talk about anyway, so I will add that to our list.
I had similar kind of concern, and I brought up a number of times the discussion with Audrey, and she promised, I believe that, as a matter of fact, a couple of times when she was making the presentation, that is going to be part of the plan. At the city council meeting a couple of days ago, one of the council members brought up the issue of complete street, and that is something that lots of jurisdictions, they're looking into it more or less what you're talking about, that kind of look at this speeding issue, look at the neighborhood safety, traffic calming, and so forth. And the response from Audrey was that yes, they're going to be looking at bringing it back. That brings up a question that I have, maybe more a comment or a question. Even though that this commission was actively involved in the reviewing of the transportation master plan, but regretfully, we did not see the final product before it was submitted to the council. And that caught me off guard, because one of the council members at one of these Saturday breakfasts with the council member brought it up and put me on the spot, and she said, did you look into this? I said, well, the versions that the Planning Commission back in August was given the charge to review and adopted was not the final version. And what you're asking is not, it was basically part of the plan that was submitted to the council. And I hope that this is not going to happen, because that put me in an awkward position of defending something that I haven't reviewed it, because that was not a part of the plan that this commission looked at it and voted on it. So now it's coming back. I hope that whenever you wanted us to give us a feedback, give us the chance to review the final product of the issue, so we have a better understanding of what we are looking at and voting on. But most of those issues, my understanding, is going to be part of the update in the TMP next year. And the good thing is that the city has a very qualified consultant. I know him very well, DKS, and they did a good job, and they should be given credit for helping the staff with the transportation master plan.
Anybody else? I had a couple comments. One is, I will reiterate that, and some of this is for you, and some of this is also for any council members that are watching. Hisham made a comment to me about the emergency response plan, and I think that that's come up a few times over the years, and at some point it really should be at least a topic of conversation. So I'll advocate for him and agree with him. I always like development code discussion, and I think I saw that woven into some of what's coming up next year, so I'll look forward to that. And the last comment I'll make, I'll step out onto the tree limb and turn around and start cutting behind me. I really think that, and I know this gets discussed in a variety of forums, and I may have missed some of the council's discussion about it, but as part of our town center discussion next year, we need to be much more head-on about the housing capacity in town center and resolve as a community once and for all what we're going to do at town center, so we don't have to continue to have this same discussion. It's been going on for 7 years since I've been involved in the planning commission, and at various times there's been varying levels of engagement with that, and a lot of it has been avoidance. And I think that this is the time now, in my opinion, especially since I'm going to be here for the next year, I really think we should deal with that and figure out one way or the other. And I'm very much agnostic on it. I want to talk about it and figure it out. But should we add more capacity to the town center or not? Let's just hash it out, listen to people's concerns, and decide so that we can move on and not rehab the discussion. When you want to talk about efficiency, we waste a lot of time talking about the same thing over and over and over again without making a lot of progress on it. I'm imagining that's a frustration for staff. It's certainly a frustration for lots of other folks. I think we should just be head on about it, deal with it, and set ourselves a goal of, by the end of any modifications we make to the town center plan, we've resolved that, what the direction is going to be for the community. That may get me in a little bit of trouble, but I really think that that's one of those topics that we just need to, whatever the politics are, deal with it, figure it out. Some people are not going to be happy. Some people are going to be happy, or maybe everybody be unhappy. That's the best solution. And then we need to move on to other topics. So I'm hoping that maybe we can do that in 2025. We'll see. Anybody else?
Monsieur, one more item, and that is something that we haven't talked, and I wanted to kind of, at least from my point of view, and I'm sure that you all agree with me, express our appreciation to citizens that sit in the audience, and every single meeting, they come to the meeting well prepared with a lot of questions and a lot of comments and so forth. So we should recognize them and appreciate their effort that they spend so much their time to look at all these issues and sometimes come on and educate us. So I wanted to kind of thank him, Mary and Paul.
Paul and Mary make us feel like we're not just talking to ourselves. Thanks, you guys. Any final comments?
More cake and coffee.
One final announcement, which I told Matt he was going to talk about. Do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Just a request that you
And take some cake home to your family, please.
We just got past Thanksgiving, Miriam. I don't think any of us really needs cake. Okay. Anything else on that topic, or we'll move on to our agenda-related public comment? Okay, let's do agenda-related public comment. Who's first? Paul.
Let's turn this on. Oh, it is on. Hello, planning commissioners. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I'd like you all to listen to my avatar, because I don't have it in me to do what he can do. Go look up the song Simon and Garfunkel, The Sound of Silence, by a band called Disturbed. Watch what this guy can do. He's an actor. I'm not. So he brings emotion and passion and rage to a song that people are not being awakened to real issues. Now, when I get mad, I lose it. So I rarely ever get mad because I know me. So he's my avatar. But what I want to talk about is something that Chair Boffman chatted about. And I want to talk about what I think the sound of silence in Sammamish has been. And if you watched me at the last couple planning commission meetings, city council meetings, I didn't let the council have it, but it was sort of no holes barred comments that weren't negative or harsh. They were accurate. And the question is, do we deal with the sound of silence in Sammamish, which is citywide housing imbalance? We don't have it. So with Mark's comment, as a community, we really need to know what the needs are. There's never been comprehensive, quantified needs analysis work done on how housing supplies meet economic and demographic and workforce. We should put the issue behind us. But to put the issue behind us, we need to know the needs, know the consequences of meeting the needs or not, get city input on those needs. And I have elevated myself in this last year. I went through a major glass ceiling. It isn't about town center first and foremost. It's about citywide housing imbalance. If we meet the needs, where? Town center is a place. There are other places. But because of how we got to where we are, our housing is out of balance. And I suggest that we turn, when it comes to the housing issue, we turn fear into fear. We turn false expectations appearing real about housing into face everything and rejoice. And I agree with Chair. Some will rejoice, others will not. But let's put the issue behind us, because this is the #1 issue in Sammamish. And if you heard me talk about this at council, this is one thing I want to repeat here. One of my suggestions in the comp plan was to incorporate the word stay into the city vision. Now, many people would think that my main reason for stay would be to live and stay in Sammamish. Well, that's true. That's one of 7 reasons. But I was going through some stuff, and I find stuff, and I say, well, who the hell wrote that? Well, it was me, but so many years ago, I forgot, oh, this is good. And some of it's not, but a lot of it is. And my stay language, I'd like to explain. Stay in the vision, to me, means 7 things, and maybe more. And I'd still like to incorporate these changes in meeting citywide housing imbalance into this year's docket. And I'm going to close in just a minute after talking about stay on why we're going to be able to do that as a community. And we is the king's we here. Stay means remain in the community. Yes, if you want. If things happen in your life and you need a different housing choice, we plan for that based on accurate needs and consequences from a citywide perspective, town center included. Another stay is for people that want to visit Sammamish. We don't have a hotel. Another stay is to support, and that is to support livability, lifestyle, and legacies in 95 or 96% of our suburban neighborhoods and rejoice in what they are, and let 3 or 4% of our urban neighborhoods be something different that we create into Sammamish mixtures. That's our way of doing something cool in centers, not like other places, so we rejoice that as well. Stay also means to curb and to limit. We should delay and hinder and restrict and suspend things that don't achieve our community vision that are put on us from state, and find ways to do it in ways that can work for state goals but translate into on-the-ground reality here, advantage to us. Stay means to preserve and protect with advantageous outcomes. That's a little bit of a repeat of the last one. Stay also means to retain. We set these things in motion and tweak it, but make it sustainable. Keep it. Keep a really cool city that is mostly suburban, semi-rural, residential, but a little bit of urban for the folks that need it in ways that are symbiotic and benefit each other. And the last stay is a little bit of poetic license. It means to brace something when you stay something. Well, when I looked up the word brace, a synonym was strut. Okay, so let's put our heads high and shoulders back, and when we face all this and get it right, we can stay Sammamish in all these areas. Now, last, how can we do it with the growth target we have? Simple. When regional growth targets altered this time from minimums to consistency, that was the final straw in the camel's back that I was looking for to separate internal imbalance from a regional growth target. Regional growth targets have never contemplated housing supply versus need within a community. Cool. So we can use citywide housing imbalance, which isn't contemplated by a growth target, and by achieving those needs, we can do inclusionary zoning on our regional growth target, have our cake and eat it too. That's my comment for tonight.
Thanks, Paul. Mary?
Hi, Mary Wichter, Sammamish, 24 years. Really good meeting, really good year. I will tell you, when I first started speaking in 2015, Lyman Howard, the city manager, asked me to come into his office and spent 10 minutes with me, and he goes, I'm really here for personal reasons. He goes, when you come to city council, we need to hear earlier, please start going to the planning commission, which more than doubled my efforts. But he really believed in it, and I didn't really know it. And they used to have 2 and 3 and 4 public hearings on everything, which now we only have 1 for most of them. And then for the big ones, you should have multiple, and there's some legal requirements. But the planning commission does need to do a lot of the work. And I think that the old councils many years back just didn't listen as much as they need to. And I think you guys really help them out. And I think you did that this year. So, and on Paul Stickney's and Mark Boffman's thing on housing, one of the reasons we have the fiscal problem that we have, the water district's having it too. If you just don't have growth and you don't have more people using it, if you're 85% single family and 15% multifamily, you just don't have what you need. We need to do the housing. We do need to look citywide. We need to increase the numbers in town center, and that helps everything else from traffic to critical areas. So I hear, let's get that talked about and actually handled in 2025. I did want to talk about several things that you guys had mentioned. You talked about the need to talk more about the salmon. The city's put, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million into the salmon, and the story is there, but the place not to do it is not at the planning commission. There's other ways to get that, and the Kokanee Work Group is one for getting that out. The Convio programs, haven't seen it. We're public. It's hidden from us. I think you've done things with jot forms before. I would really like to see, like when Mike Bresco sends in his big list of questions, or anybody does, couldn't there just be a place or a thing that public could go to and everybody could see the questions? So whoever starts early, and that way it doesn't have to be emailed around to people and you remember to not reply. I think that would be an excellent thing to do. And then as they get answered to, maybe then they get in the matrix that the marketing analysts do. That would be very helpful, because a lot of times I don't even see those till the meeting. I don't even know what the other people asked, and it's hard to be prepared if you don't know. For 2025, it was confirmed at the October meeting that the septic to sewer conversions would get addressed, and that also the transfer of development rights, and those are very important. In doing those, I'll give an example. When we talked about critical areas, CARA, which is, or CARA, some people say, critical aquifer recharge area, has a lot to do with water. And it really frustrated me being in the audience, because there were so many questions about how much water do we have and where are the wells and are we going to have enough water? And I've been going to the SPW meetings for 10 years too. And I'm like, somebody just needs to tell them, that's covered. You don't need to cover it. Like, just don't ask those questions. So that, I think, having a little bit of prep would help. So when you get to the septic to sewer conversions, you actually have a 4-legged stool. You have King County, you have the state, you have the water and sewer districts, and there's 2 of them, then you have the city. And to getting all those work, we should be able to focus down on them. King County had about, 20, 30 meetings with a lot of very diverse input because going to sewer is very expensive. So I think a lot of prep, I know you, I believe in you. Even with very few staff, I think that you can do some of the things that have been talked about that would help everybody. Also, if we're going to do any training thing about what the Planning Commission can do, staff is doing good now. They're like, option 1 is you just adopt it. Option 2 is you adopt it with these amendments, which leaves it wide open. But I think some of you, in particular the newer people, maybe don't feel comfortable doing that. So even if there's a discussion and there's a topic and you're worried about the motion goes and then it gets passed and the amendments aren't made, I mean, you can do something as simple as say, hey, in public comment, I heard about those steep slopes. I don't know a lot about them, but it sounds really important. So can we have staff look into that or whatever? I mean, you can do it really generally. And then when the motion is made on critical areas, you can say, yeah, that critical area is whatever. And the amendment can be with specific emphasis on steep slopes, or let's find out why they're not getting identified. Because with all the code we've adopted, they're still not. I believe staff is going to work with me internally to see if we can do it through a process. But when they aren't identified, they can't get protected. So it's very frustrating, and that's been true since 2005 when the first King County Code was adopted and put in for steep slopes. So I think knowing how to do amendments and being able to be confident with those would be good. I liked a lot of things that you guys talked about, so I don't need to talk to those. For the emergency preparedness, the last person in the meeting, they do 3 Mondays for the Sammamish Plateau Water District. They just adopted their emergency management map, and there's 2 pages in there. It's like 300 pages or whatever, and like at 233, 234, there's 2 maps that show their water layout, shows their sewer layout, and it shows the fault lines for that earthquake that we're due for. And I'm telling you, just from glancing at the map, you're like, I'm not heading south because you're going to run into earthquake territory. I think that there is things that you do, and one of the reasons you need to do that plan is it allows you to qualify for grants when there are issues. Like maybe you heard that King County, because we're over 11 million, we're going to get FEMA help for the last storm. So you do need to do those. And I think like people are always like, well, where do I go and where am I going to drive? And I think sheltering in place is like a really important thing to be able to do. And there's a lot of things you can do for that. So there are topics that we can do, but I think there's a lot of ways to cover them. And the staff that we have is great, but time is very short, so we need to do it. But just for this year, I wanted to let you know there were some few things that were never really discussed in meetings, and I think they popped up. One is IDK, IDS, International Dark Skies. I think that's actually going to be part of stuff, even though we never talked about it, so that was good to hear. I think I heard everybody, including you and Said in particular, we need an arborist, we need the trees, we need the money, and we just can't get that for some reason. But I think the Sustainability Commission is going to try to be the tree board, and they're applying at least so we can be a tree city. But I think we need to do some things that way. I think posting things is super important. Like this year, we worked on a lot of topics and we did so much work. We had a lot of consultants. They were like, we're not taking public comment now. We're not taking public comment now. We're not putting public comment in the matrices. We're not doing public. It's like, okay, I'm going to all these meetings. I had things to say, but you just couldn't get anything written down or stated. And I think that's a mistake. So if that could be fixed, that would be really great. And I've used my 7 minutes. But there's cake.
Thanks, Mary. Commissioner Alcoa has joined us. Anything you'd like to say? Nope.
I'm glad I was able to make it.
Anybody online?
No commenters online.
All right, great. Matt mentioned volunteer hours. I'll remind you as well. Make sure you get that done. Our next meeting on the calendar is after the new year, January 16th. Anything else from staff? No? Okay. So I will, before we adjourn, I'll leave you with this. What do you get when you combine an agnostic, a dyslexic, and insomniac? Someone who lays awake in bed at night and wonders if there's a dog. Think about it on the way home. Would someone move to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you back here in January.
Actually, we're not done until we have cake.
Yeah.
There you go.